All the manipulation that the Federal Reserve did, that's going to come back to haunt us. I'm going to go into the probability of recessions here. Whenever you see a black background frame, this came from a presentation I did called Early Warning, and it was released last summer in the middle of 2018. And so the data in it is 7 or 8 or 9 months old, all of the data sets, but it's still very pertinent, and you're only going to see about 5% of early warning, and it is actually anybody that wants to see early warning, it's still available. It was something that it took me a couple of months of work to put together early warning, and it's more than 3 hours. The presentation is more than 3 hours long of what is happening in the economy, what the probable outcomes are, and what I've been doing to protect myself. Now, this is all of the economic expansions in the United States, and this goes all the way back to before the Civil War. 1854 is the first economic expansion that's listed here, and the average of all of the expansions from back before the Civil War is 4.5 years. This is the Congressional Budget Office. So the Congress setting the budget of the United States, and Congress has projected that this economic expansion that we're currently in is going to run 20 years. The longest one in history was exactly 10 years, 120 months, and that was from 91 to 2001. And the one we're in is right about here, and in just a few months, we're going to overtake this if we don't go into a recession or if we're not already in one. But they have projected that this is going to go out until 2028. So this economic expansion with no interruptions. And the problem with that is they plan all of their budgeting, their spending, and they always spend more than they budget for. That's what the budget deficit is when they target so much expenditures and then they actually spend more than they planned. And so when they project out into the future at some constant rate of growth, what happens if they never plan on there being the possibility of some pullback and tax revenues falling, budget deficits explode then because it's something that they didn't give any likelihood of happening to. And so this is danger. I call it the Congressional Bozo's office because it's insane to project out that this economic expansion is just going to go on practically forever. They're going to just party and spend like drunken sailors during this whole time without any insurance policy against some economic disaster. Now, if we take the current expenditures divided by the tax receipts, what you get is the percent that we spend above or below our income. And here, back in the 50s, you see a couple of surpluses. But then it rises, and we're spending 1.5 times our income of tax receipts. Remember, there are some other sources of income. And then 2 times the tax receipts. And by the time we get up here to the crisis of 2008, the global financial crisis, we were spending more than 3 times tax receipts because they want to do deficit spending and stimulate the economy. But since the year 2000, tax receipts also fall with the stock market crashes. But one of the things I want to point out here is this is also an indicator of recessions. This rises sometimes just before recessions, but it rises during recessions, almost always. Here it rose during the recession and continued rising after the recession, but it's rising during a recession, before and during, after, during the recession, and then a little pullback and it keeps on rising. During the recession, a little pullback and it keeps on rising. And here it's rising and we've had a little pullback. This, it could be, a recession is a lagging indicator. It takes 2 consecutive quarters of economic contraction, but to measure economic contraction, the Federal Reserve has to wait for a month or two to collect the data, and it's got to be 2 consecutive quarters. So you're talking 8-9 months before they say, oh, 9 months ago, a recession started. That's how we learn when a recession starts, is quite a few months after it actually started. Now I'm going to go to some other recession indicators. Civilian unemployment rate. When I did early warning, this was just below 4%, and now we're down at 3.8 or 3.7%. So this was just approaching this minimum here. And the mainstream news media and financial commentators when the Federal Reserve announces unemployment fell again, we've done such a great job. Well, the lower this falls, the more likely we are to experience a recession. Take a look at this going all the way back. It falls down to some very low value, and then it jumps way up. This falling down to a low value is an indicator that a recession is imminent. Back in the 70s, it took 5%, and here it's almost 6% before the next recession starts, the 70s and the 80s. We haven't seen a value this low. You have to go back to the late 60s and into the 50s to see a value as low as what we've experienced just lately. I mean, this data just came out, I think, just a few weeks ago. So this is updated very recently. But it says that we've reached an area that says if we aren't in a recession already, there is one right around the corner. And the thing is, this next recession is going to, all the manipulation that the Federal Reserve did, that's going to come back to haunt us in the next recession is going to be a crisis.